Hi, everyone. Welcome to another live stream as part of Grid Clique. Today we have Steph Turner with us. And if you know Samantha and I, we are the co-founders of Grid Clique. And we have our lovely Melissa, producer, down in the comments below, making sure that we're all put together. Thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, girls. So good to finally see your lovely faces after quite a while. And great to know to be here for the first Grid Clique live of 2023. So I feel very privileged. Thank you very much. But really excited to chat to you girls and catch up.
Well, we're so excited to have you as our first chat for 2023. This has kind of like been in the works. I think 2022, we were trying to make it work, but it's like great timing at this point. So we met Steph on Clubhouse, seems like almost ages ago, and it's probably a story that's not unfamiliar to a lot of people. And we did actually host an interview with Steph on Clubhouse, but a lot has changed, Steph. I'm not going to give too much out of your story because I would love for you to tell it. That was back in like what, Sarah, 2020?
Yeah, Samantha and I met in 2020, and we met Steph online, as people do nowadays. Yeah, back in it was right around the livery reveals, right after the livery reveals of 2020. Yeah. So 2 years ago, 3 years ago.
Good memory. It feels like a lifetime.
It's incredible. So without further ado, Steph, why don't you start by telling us a little bit about yourself, what you do, and what you were up to last weekend?
Yeah, so my name is Steph Turner, for those that don't know me. I work for Formula E. I work on the marketing team, specifically on the race marketing team. So essentially what my role involves is promoting the events, so promoting the races locally, making sure that the city that we're racing in know that we're arriving, know that there's a race on, promoting the ticket sales for that so that hopefully we sell out. Get lots of people in the grandstands, and just create like a buzz and a hype around locally that that people are excited that Formula E is coming to their home city. So yeah, in a nutshell, that's what I do. But yeah, I'm sure we'll get into more of like the detail of what that entails.
So last weekend you were in Mexico for the Mexico City E-Prix.
Yes, I was. So again, that feels like a lifetime ago. Time just goes so quickly, like especially when you're racing and going from race to race. It was the first race of season 9, so the new era for us with our new Gen 3 car, and that was in Mexico City. And for any of those who watched, it was an incredible event. Any of those who attended will know it was a really special race to be at. So yeah, it was super good to be back with Formula E, back racing. As I say, new era, new car, new branding as well. We've got a whole new look. So yeah, it was really cool, really special.
That's awesome. I don't know much about Formula E, if I'm going to be quite honest. And I've seen that this year there's been a huge drive for it. There is a ton of creators in Mexico as well. And it looked like the kickoff was amazing. Can you also share with our audience, again, Samantha and I know this because we're very privileged to know this, but can you share with everyone else what your journey to get to where you are looks like? Obviously, there was a time that you didn't work in motorsport, and a lot of the people that follow us and a lot of people that engage with us are looking to somewhat get into motorsport. So I think hearing a story of how you even just got into Formula E as a career and as a profession would be just it's a super cool story.
Yeah. So first of all, I'll probably preface this by saying it wasn't like a straightforward journey, as most people's aren't. Like when you're not in that bubble of motorsport, you probably look in on it thinking, oh, you have to study XYZ to get XYZ job, and it doesn't quite work like that. Not all the time anyway, and certainly not for me. So I studied languages at uni. So I did French and Spanish with management, just because I loved learning languages. Didn't quite know what I wanted to do. Always had a passion for motorsport, but it never quite clicked in my head that was something realistically achievable. It was just kind of like, the standard career paths, lawyer, doctor, teacher, that kind of thing, that's all you were really taught at school. But yeah, so I did languages at uni, graduated. I did a few internships in various different random kind of like areas of work. And then my first job was in financial sales, actually, super random. So I did that for a year and a half after graduating, and then I did not like that. I wanted a bit of a change. Spoke to an MD of a company, and they kind of found out that I, liked to be creative, had all these ideas, and she recommended to me that I look into marketing. And there were two marketing agencies locally to me that she recommended that I get in touch with. I got in touch with them, got a job at one of them, and I stayed there for about 3.5 years. So I was an account manager at a marketing agency. So working with clients in construction, pharmaceutical, and insurance. So again, nothing to do with motorsport. Still marketing, kind of like learning my field. I previously done at uni a marketing internship in France. So kind of had an inkling of what that involved, but yeah, really kind of developed my knowledge there at the agency. And it was whilst I was there, I took a trip with a friend to the Bahrain Grand Prix in, gosh, I can't even remember now, maybe 2018. And I'd randomly by fate met the chairman and founder of F1 in schools. We got talking. He was really interested in kind of how he could promote his product and his kind of thing. And then it kind of got me thinking, like, this could be like an opportunity for me. We kept in touch. Ended up, I think it was the following year, going to help him do the social media and cover the UK finalists visiting at Silverstone. So I was in the paddock working with them, capturing like the kind of behind the scenes of the UK finalists of F1 in schools who'd won this competition nationally, and following their journey in the paddock. So that was super cool. That was a great introduction to what it was like to work in motorsport, work in Formula One, work in the paddock. And that gave me the opportunity to network with a lot of people. And then I kind of just did that as a weekend side project whilst I was still working at the agency. And then that snowballed into them flying me out to Abu Dhabi in 2019 for, I think, week to 2 weeks, where they had their world finals. So that was super cool. That was like an incredible experience. Amazing. Really working on a live event, and then kind of covering that behind the scenes on socials, and then taking that right through to the winners and being in the paddock on a busy, season finale race, F1 race weekend. So yeah, did that. And then from there, I was really like, right, I need to make motorsport my full-time thing. And then 2020 came, had a few talks with a few people, did a few like ad hoc projects, and then lo and behold, COVID. So obviously all plans got put on ice for quite a long time. And then, yeah, I was determined to switch up my jobs, follow my dream, so to speak, and ended up getting a role at Formula E, and here I am. Sorry, that was very long-winded, but there you go.
You didn't have to apologize at all. I think like it's so important to, I think, hammer home to a lot of people that like, I think a lot of viewers and a lot of feedback that we get is that like, I'm this age and, how do I transition? Or like, I haven't started in motorsport. There's no way that I can do this. But it's like from everyone we talk to, it's not necessarily linear. As you said, like Sarah and I both have jobs in finances. She works in investor relations. I'm like in the marketing side, work with investor relations. And it's like, this is what we do on our free time. And it's not something that we look to transition over. I mean, Sarah does do work with in motorsport as well, but it's like, you just have to get a little bit curious. You just have to like put in some time and like find some answers. And like, I mean, it's probably a little bit more harder than that, but it's like, just because you haven't started in that field doesn't mean you can't end up there. And I think also like our generation is the one that like who probably proved that like whatever you study in is probably not what you end up in.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's so true. And also just realizing I've missed a massive part out of that, which you girls have probably clocked, but the Driven by Diversity podcast, which was a huge kind of catalyst. Obviously doing all of that kind of stuff before set the wheels in motion, but then it was really where, when 2020 came and all the opportunities got thrown out the window, it was like, okay, what can we do to still keep things going and not use this dead time to do something productive and actually strive towards that goal still. And then that was where myself and Ariana Bravo set up the Driven by Diversity podcast, with the lovely permission of the lovely Lindsay Orridge, who runs the brand. So that was definitely a significant part of my journey for sure.
Can you share a bit more about the podcast for maybe people who are listening in and don't know anything about it? How it really got started with you and Ariana and what the focus was, and just more on that.
Yeah, so I actually met Ariana in end of 2019. It was just after I'd got back from that Abu Dhabi trip, and it was at the time it was called Dare to Be Different, run by Susie Wolf, and it's now Girls on Track. So it was a networking event that we'd met at, and we'd kept in touch. And it wasn't until I think the May where we kind of came up with this idea of a podcast, and we're like, okay, we need to do this. And essentially the Driven by Diversity podcast was our platform where we could kind of delve into the stories of those who work in motorsport who are from underrepresented backgrounds, because there are people out there that are from these backgrounds but don't necessarily get that spotlight that those engineers or mechanics or people in the media, drivers, your traditional people that you would see on TV or see in the media. So we wanted to find those stories, tell those stories, shine a spotlight on them, because they're important and because they're really interesting stories, but then also because it was for the people that were listening, where if you were from an underrepresented background and you were listening to someone's story who you could relate to, who kind of shared a similar upbringing to you or similar experiences to you, that's super powerful. And that's something I think motorsport has been lacking since like the beginning of time, really, which is probably going back to why me not really seeing motorsport as a realistic career path. That's probably one of the reasons. So it was really important that we did this podcast, and like the people that we spoke to, all incredible, all amazing stories, some of them quite moving, and we learned a lot, and hopefully lots of people who are listening learned a lot as well, and it was positive for everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't think that that's a question, right? It's exactly why Samantha and I also do what we do. It's always about sharing other people's stories, and especially the stories of people that you don't traditionally hear about. I mean, again, just as you said, Samantha and I didn't see that we could work in motorsport when we were younger. And that's why we love talking to people like you, who prove to the younger generation that women, people of color, people of different ethnicities, everywhere across the planet can work in motorsport and can work in Formula One and can follow their dreams, even though you don't always see that representation. So obviously you guys kickstarting that was a huge, huge point of value towards Formula One and the communities themselves. And then something that you mentioned earlier, well, kind of like a two-part question, but something that you mentioned earlier was the power of networking, and how networking and talking with people really gets you to the next stage. And especially within motorsports, it's something that I think Samantha and I can agree is super, super important for growing your career. So how has that, and more specifically your relationship with Ariana, obviously you guys are still close, even though you both are now working in motorsport full time, it just speaks to the amazing friendship you have, and the support and the help that you provide each other. So can you just talk about the importance of making those connections when you're working in any male dominated field, whether it be motorsports or finance or anything?
And how you find ways to support each other, I think, is really important to share.
Well, if Ariana's watching right now, she'll be laughing, because she's like the biggest advocate for like me and networking, in terms of like just in terms of me and like networking. That is something that I think is the most important thing you could ever do, like specifically in motorsport, where it is such a small world. Like people at work laugh when I say hello to people in the paddocks. They're like, Steph, everyone, but it's literally just because like from all of those different opportunities I've had previously, and forging those relationships with people, that has been really important for me to get to where I am now. Like, for example, if I didn't create that relationship and carry on that conversation with F1 in schools, then I wouldn't have had those opportunities. Same with Ariana at Girls on Track, that networking event. Like, it doesn't need to be, someone big that's got opportunities that will open doors to you. Like, everyone is worth speaking to, like, and learning their stories and, supporting them. You don't just have to be speaking to the people that are gonna, the ones that you think are gonna give you an opportunity. Like, it's also goes the other way, and kind of, supporting people like, me and Ariana supporting each other, where we were at that point, like, had no connection, like real connection to motorsport. We didn't work in motorsport. We're both from corporate backgrounds. So like, we're big advocates for networking, in terms of like how we support each other. Like, we don't obviously see each other as much as we used to. We used to speak every day with the podcast, obviously, planning, editing, interviewing. So both now super busy with our own jobs, and going off to races and stuff, but we check in when we can, and always do like big catch ups, and if there's anything that we need advice on, we're like voice noting each other, messaging each other. So I think that's really important as well, to have someone in your corner that's gonna back you and push for you. So yeah, very, very lucky to have that in Ariana. Love ya.
How I feel about you, Sarah.
Thank you.
It's networking, and I think forging authentic relationships are things that, like, and I think that's what you're saying about you and Ariana, and like, authentic. Yeah. It's not ones based on like, what can I get from them? Like you had mentioned, you're like, don't just network for the sake of like, what can I get from this person?
Yeah. What can you give them is like my main thing. Like, I always tell people, like, speak to people, but people are only going to be, receptive if you can tell them, find out what their pain points are, what their challenges are, and like give them an answer to that, and be like, hey, I've got a solution for you. I know that you don't know who I am, but I've been looking at this, and I think that this could be even better if you did that, like that kind of thing as well.
Yeah, definitely. And I think what you're describing is like a friendship, like, it's something that aligns, it's mutually like beneficial for both parties. And I think that's both parties. I'm talking about it in a transaction, but for both people. And I think that's so lovely to express and to say. And I think there's a perception sometimes when you reach a certain level, and I'm talking about you and Ariana, I think like you're worried that maybe people might try to take advantage of you. And I think, but like, you both just really forge forward with such like integrity and honesty. And I think by doing that, you're laying the ground field of like, whoever wants to interact with us, this is how you have to come forward. It has to be kindness. It has to be like, authentic, and it has to be, and I think a lot of women do that in their space. Like, I think that's what they offer to a lot of places. So you talk about the importance of authentic relationships, authenticity, networking, and now about more like soft skills. Like, I know you and I have had conversations about languages. So, Steph lived in Sevilla for a little bit of time, which is amazing. And she was in France as well. Are there any other like soft skills that you think really have provided you with like, not a leg up, but like, definitely like a bit of a jump start in where you're going? Because again, a lot of people don't start in motorsport, but they're able to transition their skills into something like yourself, like marketing and other things. So if you could tell us if there's any other soft skills that you think are really beneficial in what you do.
Yeah, for sure. So you mentioned languages, like not everyone obviously has a second language or whatever. So it doesn't matter, whatever is your primary language, communication is like number one, 100% in any role. Being able to communicate effectively, efficiently, with people from all different paths, all different backgrounds, but also all different levels. In my role, I'm speaking to C-suite, I'm speaking to execs, I'm speaking to everyone in between, I'm speaking to people from different cultures in the cities that we race in around the world. So that's super, super important. I'd say also teamwork. Obviously, we're pushing together to reach one goal at Formula E. put on amazing events, and the races that we run, and whatever your department is, even though you're doing a different role, something slightly different to someone else, like you're all pushing towards the same thing in the end. It's definitely teamwork, and I think resilience and adaptability as well. Like motorsport is very fast paced. You need to keep up. It can be quite hard at times, like with how fast paced it is, and the constant challenges that it throws up. Because there's so much going on. You're having to find solutions to problems, solve them, make sure everything's running smoothly. And with that, you have to be resilient and overcome that, and be able to adapt and be agile, and find the answer quickly, and all of that good stuff. So there's lots of different soft skills that are important, but I think that for me, they're probably the key ones. Anyway, for my role or for motorsport.
Yeah, and I think that those skills really translate almost across any industry and any job, right? You need to be able to communicate effectively to anyone, no matter what you're doing. And again, I think that goes right back to Samantha's point from earlier is you can get into any industry anytime you want later in life. It doesn't matter, right? As long as you're never starting from scratch, you're always starting from experience, and you're able to pull that experience that you've gotten from past roles, no matter what they are, or learnings, experiences from past roles, whether you like them, whether you didn't, whatever it is, right? Even if it's something completely different. And I think that people are so almost scared of trying something new because they feel like they're really starting from scratch. But in reality, I think it's a really nice reminder that we're not. Like when you go through life, you learn a crap ton of stuff, and you're always able to apply that. And I think especially as it comes to such a fast paced, intense job like motorsports, where there's always something changing, always something going, again, Samantha and I just now started working in it professionally, but historically we haven't worked in it professionally, and we would still understand how insane of a sport it is on the back end. Never mind us on the front end, but everything that goes on behind the scenes. So yeah, I think that that's an amazing just reminder, I think, for a lot of people.
Yeah, I think the adaptability piece is probably something, that gets more and more important in my line of work, just with just changing priorities. And then you see at the race, just people running around, and you're just like, oh my God, the amount of organization has to go into this. It takes a certain sense of adaptability, but like you said, Sarah, don't, as she had said, it's not something to feel discouraged by. It's something that could be learned. It's something that could be built upon. It's a soft skill. And I'm so amazed at how many people in motorsport speak more than one language. It's just, you have Italian speaking English, you have English people speaking Spanish and French. It's it really feels like a very global community, which is really cool. So speaking of adaptability and chaos and organized chaos, why don't you walk us through what a typical race weekend looks like for you? When do you arrive? When do you have to be at track? Or maybe even before you get to the city?
Yeah. So my role is really about managing the marketing campaign for the ticket sales. So ultimately my main goal is to sell out the venue, which we managed to do for the season opener in Mexico. So full house, which is really good. But I'm basically doing that up until the race, managing those campaigns and managing the paid media that's running around them. Typically I'd fly out to a race beginning of the week. Mexico, slightly different. I flew out a week and a half before, as I had to go out and organize a shoot. So I don't know if you girls would have seen it. We had a show car in the city center in Mexico. Super cool place, really bringing out the colors and the vibrancy and the passion and energy of Mexico. That's what we really wanted to portray through the visuals. And I think we managed to do that, which I'm really happy with the images. They look amazing. So yeah, finding a venue for that. It was a bit last minute with the availability of a car. So arranging logistics and transport for the car to get to the venue or location, finding that location, organizing photographer, all of the stuff that comes with organizing a shoot. And then kind of, it depends race to race what I'm doing, but shoot aside, running the paid media and making sure it's all up to date. So we'll have out of home around. So if you hit the airport when you arrive into the city, hopefully you should see some on your route in. You should see some, especially around the track. There should be some around as well. And just making sure that's all running in the places where it should be, making sure the creative's up to date. For example, with Mexico, because we sold out, I needed to get our marketing agency to switch over the creative to promote tune-in, to promote broadcast and the race on the local channels. So switching over those call to actions and things like that. And then, just supporting on race day, and lots of different things going on, but it's always super busy. Can never quite like tell you exactly what I do because I always end up doing lots of different things. But super, super busy, but it's chaos that we love.
So my question for you on that is, do you actually end up being able to watch the race, or do you find that you're like running around and doing crazy things or in some corner and you actually have to probably rewatch it later?
So I do end up being able to watch it from about 10 minutes in. So I do end up missing the first bit usually, which is a bit sad, but that's the way life is. So we do. Well, I do anyway in my role up until then. And then before that, super busy, kind of meeting with local stakeholders, planning future events. For example, we had the guys from the Brazilian team down in Mexico, so working with them on the upcoming Sao Paulo race, or working with local stakeholders in the week to do like last minute ticket pushes or last minute broadcast pushes for the race that we're currently at. So, but do get to watch some of the race, but I do always try and watch it back on TV when I get home. So it's not always, you don't always catch everything, do you?
Yeah. How far in advance do you have to start planning for these? Like, obviously, there's a lot that goes into it since you're trying to sell tickets. And there's obviously a lot of races that happen throughout the year. So how does that work when you have to plan so far ahead when there's so much to do?
So it's easier for places like Mexico and Monaco, where essentially it's a fixed circuit. So nothing really changes in terms of like where the grandstands are and stuff. So it's pretty easy to get them out on sale. So for example, the last race in season 8, so the previous season, was in Seoul in mid-August, and literally the day after the race, we were putting Mexico on sale. So the campaign just starts from then. But prior to that, I think it was from about May, we were planning, what that campaign looks like, what the on sale looks like, all of that kind of thing. So it's whilst you're in the midst of a super busy season, you're also planning for the following season. So it does get a bit crazy. And then from there, just staggered really, depending on when grandstands get finalized, what they have to be approved by local authorities. So obviously we race in city centres, so it's not like you can just put them anywhere. They need to be approved. So once they're all ready, then there's other things to obviously organize, but typically then we can then go on sale.
So you have to be like, you have to live in the present and also like live in the future. It's like,
it's a bit wild.
Life of marketing. Literally. Do you have like a favorite track?
I would say, do you know what, Mexico? I'm still on a high from it. It was unreal. Mexico really offers when I say favorite track, I mean kind of like the full holistic view of the event in terms of Formula E specifically. I think Mexico City and where we race and what we do with that event is just the absolute shining example of what Formula E is and how good of a championship we are. For example, in Formula One, the paddock in Mexico City, because obviously you race at the same venue. The paddock in Formula One is actually the fan village in Formula E. So fans can walk all around there, and you've got the back of the garages that back onto the fan village. So fans can kind of wait outside the back of the garages, see their favorite drivers walk past. They'll come out sometimes, do some signings ad hoc. Then the drivers are walking from the back of the garages to team and crew, which is what we call like the cafeteria, I guess, of where we eat. Like, we all eat together. So they'll be walking across to that building in amongst the fan village. So yeah, I love Mexico for that, because it's super accessible, super inclusive. Fans get so much for, you know, for what they pay in their ticket. We have some incredible entertainment after the race, but also pre-race. We had Nervo, the DJ duo, playing within the Forest Soul, so on the track, for a 20-minute DJ set just before the race, and they cleared their set about 5 minutes before the lights went out. So they're literally on the track in front of that stadium section, like fully packed with fans, and it's just such a cool atmosphere. It's really, really cool.
Yeah. So I think what you were just talking about, that accessibility is one of many reasons why Formula E is just really blowing up right now. Especially, I think this coming year, there's a lot of hype ready, even though it's been around for now 9 seasons. I think there's a lot of hype coming in, because obviously there's that huge wave of fans that came into Formula One, and now they're starting to learn other motorsports, and they're starting to learn other series. And it's exactly that. The ticket price and what you get for the ticket price and the accessibility and the access that you get is insanely different. What else do you think is contributing towards this huge growth of Formula E this year?
Yeah, as you say, Sarah, it's like there is a hungrier appetite in general for motorsport at the minute, and that's just only building. I think as well, you say that competitive price point, it's very affordable for most races, definitely in comparison to Formula One, for example. Like, for example, Monaco, all of our grandstand seats are €30. You will not get a ticket for that for F1. So it's that accessibility, but it's also accessibility not only economically, but also in terms of actually getting to the circuit. We race very much in city centres. Like, we're obviously all about street circuit racing. So our ethos is, you know, you can get on public transport, you can get on a bus, you can get on a train, you can cycle, you can walk, and you can get there from your doorstep. You don't need to drive for 2 hours to the countryside to, you know, then park and then walk for an hour to get to where you need to be. So it's super accessible in terms of that. And as well, I think it's just a super exciting championship. There's lots of drivers from lots of different disciplines from the top of their game all coming into Formula E. So you've got people that are ex-F1 drivers, you've got kind of from DTM, from sports cars, all different kind of series coming in, which makes the racing super exciting. I think in Monaco season 8, we had 150 overtakes in just over 45 minutes, which again, you don't get in Formula One. So yeah, like it's super, super exciting racing. And yeah, just it's great.
And also there's different car manufacturers as well, which is like also cool to see, and how they compete. And like from a CSR initiative, I'm like, I wonder how the car companies and manufacturers choose which one. I mean, obviously money is a factor, but like, I think the sustainability and the electric side of it is really cool. Sarah, I don't know about you, but we need to plan to get to like an F1. Like Rome is on my list. New York is on my list.
Well, New York isn't happening this year, which is like, that was my biggest disappointment, Steph. Because last year I wanted to go, and something ended up happening that weekend, so I couldn't go. And I was like, it's okay, I'll just go next year. And I was putting together our racing calendar for Samantha and I for this year. I was like, okay, New York Formula E, we're gonna go. And I was like, it's not there. So is that like this year, or is that?
And Vancouver as well got taken.
There's an interesting story about this, and it's quite like significant in terms of like what we do as a championship and what we strive to do. So they're putting in where we race in New York is a ferry terminal, and they're putting in flood defenses to protect the area, because it's of the environment and climate change is affecting the area. So they're needing to, you know, fix it, which makes then our venue as such smaller, which means that we can't really race there anymore. We're having to find an alternative of how we could race there. But it just goes to show like what Formula E is racing for, you know, sustainability, the environment, and already where we're racing is being affected by that. So it's kind of like it's sad, but it's also hitting home that kind of reason of why we race. But we do have Portland in June. I think it's the end of June. So if you fancy it.
Yeah, Samantha, it sounds like we need to go to the West Coast.
I'm down. Like any day, time. Just tell me. I'll be putting in that time off request. So you know, you gave us an amazing stat of like overtakes. Like what? But like what other parts? Let's talk about specifically FE to F1. What else do you think distinguishes it? Like obviously the like sustainability aspect, the fact that like climate change or the footprint of this series has is really at the forefront. Which and hearing that tracks are affected, that you can't race at those tracks anymore because of the effects of climate change is like wild to me. Like I don't think I've heard any series talk about that. So that's wild. But what do you think distinguishes FE from F1? I mean, besides the obvious.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, everything that makes it different distinguishes it. And I've already talked about a couple of those bits in terms of like the accessibility, inclusivity, and being, city centre and very much racing on street circuits. But also, like, I think the way that we try and do things differently, like we try, we're very much disruptive. We try and be different and offer something different to the traditional motorsport, and kind of really speaking to that Gen Z millennial population. For example, London, I think is such a cool example, and I'm so happy that is our season finale for season 9 this year, end of July. So we're I think the first or the only kind of top tier elite motorsport that races inside and outside on one track. So the cars go through the Excel building, which is a massive like exhibition center in London, goes through and then comes out the other side. You've got the DLR, which is like this train service kind of running alongside as well, next to the track. But yeah, it goes around the Docklands and comes back into the venue, into the building. So that's super cool. And I think obviously, as that's never been done before, that's something really cool that sets us apart. And Da Costa, one of our drivers, actually tweeted after that race in season 8, like, wow, guys, this is like NBA meets motorsport. We need more of this, please. So it's honestly so cool. Like, because you're inside as well, you're able to create such an atmosphere with, lots of lights, lots of music, like a proper entertainment product. It's something that you've never seen before. So if that's a race, if Formula E is something you need to put on your list, then that's a race that needs to go on there as well, for sure.
I literally texted Sarah that. I'm like, we're going.
In the middle of this right now, it's Samantha. We're going to London. So we're going to London now. So we're gonna have to add that to our race calendar. So obviously, other than like events like that, right, where I think again people like sometimes forget that motorsports is for entertainment. Obviously, it's a sport as well, and there's a lot of drama and whatever, but it is an entertainment factor. And when you're talking about doing something so different in a very traditional sport that is motorsport in general, it's so cool that you're able to like break in and do something new and do something different. Is there anything else about Formula E specifically that you think just like is so cool that no one else is doing, or maybe some initiatives that you're starting that you're seeing other series start to take on?
Yeah, I think obviously sustainability is a massive point, and the reason for why the championship was created. So, we've been net zero since day zero, and the first and only sport to be certified net zero carbon since inception. So that's, a huge thing to our name. But it goes far beyond just the environment and the environmental aspect. And I think when you think of sustainability, you do usually just think of the environment and climate change and everything like that. But with Formula E, we go far beyond that. Obviously, we've got a focus on it, but we also, one of our pillars is kind of leaving that legacy, leaving a positive impact in the communities and the cities that we race in. So we have an incredible sustainability team that work with these local communities. So, for example, depending on the race, with schools, hospitals, charities, youth groups, etc. So really kind of engaging with the community, leaving a legacy, leaving a positive impact, and not just, turning up the circus, turning up, racing, polluting and leaving. Like, we really try and give something back, and we work with our partners as well to do just that. For example, in New York, we were planting trees. I think in Monaco, we were delivering goodie bags with DHL to local children and things like that. So lots of different things that we do in terms of community engagement. And then, yeah, just also sustainability environmentally, like with all of the sustainable materials we use, recycling. I'm not hot on all of the facts, but obviously the new tire supplier for this season, Hankook, I think 30% of the tire itself is made from sustainably sourced material or recycled products. So, I mean, for a top tier international single seater motorsport series, having that play between performance and sustainability is obviously really important, and being able to deliver a 30% sustainable tire is incredible.
And I love when you're talking about community engagement as well, because we're starting to see that in some of other series, and we're starting to see that really come up. And I think that for the future of motorsports, obviously millennials and Gen Zs are going to be demanding that. Like, they're going to be demanding sustainability. They're going to be demanding giving back to communities, because if you don't have that, then like, what's the point? Like, of course, there's again that entertainment factor, right? But if we want to be saving our planet for the future, considering that is our future, that has to start becoming more and more common, more and more apparent. We've seen F1 do that in Miami, and I only saw that because I lived here, so I was able to get a first eye view on that. But I think other racing series and other sports are going to have to speak up more on that too.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think, Steph, you said I don't know all the programs that are happening, but you've been like a fantastic ambassador for sharing like all this about EFE. Like, I, will admit I went in kind of blind about this. And I, there's so much I would love to learn. And this has been like a really great like crash course. And I'm like so curious. I want to go learn so much more. So what, like with every year that you work in motorsport, do you set like different goals? Do you have like things that you would like to do differently? Are there things like programs you would like to instill and try? Like, this is like, I'm turning more towards like your career right now.
Yeah, I mean, obviously I've been at Formula E now for just over a year and a half now, maybe. But having gone to every race last season and worked and led across half of those in terms of the marketing campaign for ticketing, that was my kind of settling in, like finding out, like learning the market, learning what we do differently in each city or for each campaign or whatever. And now this year is very much like okay, I know what I'm doing because I've done it before. What learnings can I take from the previous year? How can we make that campaign stronger? How can we sell more? How can we kind of engage the community more? How can we, do something cool like the show car activation and the shoot, and bringing to life the city through the creative that we put out. So yeah, for me, it's like kind of how can we improve? How can we do better? And I'd also really love to work with some of our other teams more within kind of the umbrella of brand is what we have at Formula E. So under that will sit my team, be the brand marketing team, the talent team, design and brand ops and partnerships marketing as well. And how can we work with those teams better and closer to, although, they're not trying to convert and sell tickets, but how can I, for example, work with the talent team to use their content creators to, promote ticket sales in the market and things like that. So yeah, lots of things in my mind, and how we can also engage fans and really put them first as well. Because like this for me is the year that we are speaking to the fans directly, like bringing them in on experiences and things like that. And as I said, in Mexico, we do that. Like we have a free autograph session as well. I think at some of the races this year, definitely we had one in Mexico. And yeah, if we do any activations outside of the race venue, like how can we bring fans to that? Like how can we bring them closer to the sport?
I love that so much. I think it makes me think of one of the chats we had last year with Cassidy, Sarah, where she had spoken about when cities host these races. So she was talking about Formula One in Montreal, for instance. Like, what does the fan experience look like? Do they just travel to the track? That one happens to be a city track. And then what? Like, is there anything else happening around the city? How do you engage people while they're at the track. Like, I think that consideration of fan experience is becoming more and more at the forefront, which is a wild thing to think about. You would think like, you know, like you'd think it'd be a given, but it's less than a transaction now. It's less like I buy my ticket and I show up. It's like, what else can there be? And I think that's so cool. I think it's amazing that Formula E is like really, really driving that. And as Sarah said, we're only starting to see that sort of connection to the community, that connection to the fans in Formula One. And I think it's because of the content creator community that's really putting that out there, that content out there that makes them probably think like, oh, this whole subset of people.
Exactly. I mean, with Formula E, I mean, we've been doing it since inception of the championship, since 2014. And another example, which I also really love, is in Monaco every year we have all of the drivers pair up and go to all of the schools in, like, they'll get given a school to go to in Monaco, and they'll get to, you know, engage with the kids there, and they'll do like Q&As with the drivers and stuff. It's just like a nice way of, you know, getting them involved.
Yeah, we also got a comment from Mariella that she says, I just Googled Brazilian tickets and there's a discount if you agree to donate some of that to charities. Is that something that it is for all races, or is that just Brazil specifically?
I think it might just be Brazil specifically. I think it might be something to do with like how ticketing works out there in terms of like just Brazil specifically.
That's amazing. And I'm actually surprised and shocked that other races or other series don't do something similar as well. I mean, obviously we are seeing that Formula E is pretty much the one and only series, at least the one that I'm aware of, that is fully about sustainability and giving back to community, et cetera, versus other series are pretty much for racing and just focus solely on racing and that experience. But I think that is such an interesting, like, there's so many different ways that motorsports can engage back with that community. And it's about being creative of how you can do that. I super respect that. So like, is that something that comes naturally to you, and like creating those ideas, or like, what does that even look like from an inception of idea, something like this, to execution? What does that look like?
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's not always possible to, when it's, you know, for example, if something's limited in budget or if it's a last minute project, but where I can, I'll always try and think of ways of how we can bring fans into it or how we can engage. And again, with that caveat that, you know, it's not always possible to bring everyone in, like, but you can engage a few different fans. And for me, I think why that comes to me naturally is because I am a fan. And before working here, I was always the one going, hey, why can't I go to that one? You know, why didn't they engage fans in that? Why didn't, you know, why is no one there that isn't an influencer or, you know, a celeb? So I think that's why I'm always trying to think of how we can bring fans in on those projects and stuff.
And I think that goes complete full circle to what we were talking about earlier, is you're never starting from scratch. You're always starting from experience, even if it's just as a fan experience, bringing your own learnings and bringing things that you want to see into the sport, and being able to do that through your role and your position is amazing to watch.
And I think this leads into a great next question. What do you think motorsport needs more of, and what do you think motorsport needs less of?
Ooh, definitely more diversity, more fan engagement. Both of those super important, and pleased to say that, you know, Formula E, the paddock, when I walk around, it's the most diverse, definitely in terms of gender diversity paddock that I've been in. I think that actually Formula E itself, as in the company, is probably around 50-50, which is really good. And then, fan engagement in terms of just motorsport generally outside of Formula E, like making, you know, the fans really feel part of the sport, giving them more opportunities to interact and having the sport be more accessible. And I think, well, obviously definitely seeing like the growth of that, and social media in the last 5 or so years has definitely helped pick that up too. So yeah, excited to see some of the ideas that come out relating to that, and how we can do that and be innovative with it as well.
What do you think about need less of? Yeah, that's always a complicated question.
Of course, this is a hard one. I'm not going to lie, I did have a little bit of a brainstorm prior to this, and I couldn't really think of anything. So I'd be intrigued to hear what you girls think.
Well, so we actually asked this question to Jess McFadden when we interviewed
Yeah.
her back in Miami last year, which we still haven't released, but we have the footage of. And her answer, which was actually, I believe, if I recall correctly, the same answer as Tony Cowan Brown when we asked her, was money, which I thought was very interesting because a lot of
That
these
is
sports are obviously run by money. So, you know,
Mm.
there are certain teams and drivers that need more money. There are certain teams and drivers that need less money. So I thought that was a really interesting dynamic because
Yeah.
that's what motorsport is run by.
100%. I actually would love to, I'm not going to steal the answer, but I'd love to agree with it. Because do you know what as well? Like for me, when you said money, first of all, the first thing that came to my head in terms of like, with my marketing brain on is having less money makes you be more creative. And it makes you come up with new solutions to problems and things like that. And that's when you come up with something different. That's when you do lean on all of those different stakeholders throughout the ecosystem, and even including within that fans, like how can we get the fans to make our product great? That kind of thing.
Yeah, talking about careers and not starting from scratch. I used to work for nonprofits, so our budgets were like not even existent. So when I moved to private sectors, they were just like, oh, like, I was used to using such a small piece of the budget to create and amplify it probably at the same rate. And you know what, thinking back on it now, a lot of it was like what we understand now is like UGC, so user generated content, and like, polling, or like, just following up and just like talking to your stakeholders and stuff like that. And that's really, so my answer would have been lip service, and I'm just going to leave it at that. That's what motorsport needs less of.
100%. I also really agree with that.
That's a great answer, Samantha. And it's so interesting to think about a lot of these things, because in some dynamics, things like money or speaking on things, lip service, are important in so many ways. But again, the authenticity that comes out when you have less of both is super important, and something that I really appreciate. We also just got another comment from Mariella, and she says, I feel the best teams are the ones that, despite of money or how elite they might be, are still in contact with fans as if they weren't, which I think is an amazing, amazing point that she brings up, right? It's that genuine connection, that genuine authenticity, that people become fans of a team or of a driver, of a personality, because of their personality, because of their brand, quote unquote, for no better term than that. And then that, of course, translates into more money, more sponsorships, more money, and everything that would help support them. So I love that answer, Mario. That's great.
Steph, do you what, I know you spoke very highly of Mexico City in that campaign. What other campaign do you think was one that you were really happy about and like thought was like, wow, that was fantastic? And can you describe it for us?
I would say New York last year. Whilst kind of like the grandstand capacity, as I said, because the venue's getting smaller, it wasn't huge. We sold out, and there was so much like demand for people to get to the race. Like we were having people on the day, even though it was very clear we were sold out, it was promoted that we were sold out, saying, how can I need to get here? Like, how can I get in? Like, can I watch it outside the track? I'm like, no, it doesn't work like that. But yeah, so that was really cool to see. And I think just definitely seeing the effect of the growth in motorsport, and what effect that's had in the US was really, really clear to see at that event. So I thought that was really, really cool. And also just coming out of like last year, thinking back to it, we were still coming out of COVID. Like Mexico was the first race of the second race of the season, and we were still having to have people wear masks. We were still having to have them, show that they were had a negative test at the door when they were showing their ticket, that kind of thing. Like we were still coming out of like the midst of it. So getting to New York and being able to sell out and kind of coming back to a full capacity event, and then also just seeing the demand on top of that, was really, really cool to see. So yeah, it's a shame we're not coming back to New York, but hopefully we can replicate that demand in Portland, even though it's on the other coast.
Yeah. So my next question for you, well, actually, before I go into my question, if anyone who is watching has any questions for Steph, we have 4 minutes left with her, so feel free to drop them in the comments, and then we can ask her, and you can ask her anything. But
That
my
went
next
really
question
fast, by the way.
is, sorry,
That went really fast, by the way. I'm like, oh shoot.
it always goes by fast. Time flies when you're having fun. But speaking about the U.S. market, obviously we have Portland. Do you see any other future U.S. races being added to the calendar moving forward? You see, obviously, with Formula One, the influx of American races that are coming on. Do you see that translating to Formula E and potentially other series?
And Canada, please.
North America.
North America. I mean, I hope so. I don't know, honestly. I don't know, but if Portland goes well, then hopefully we see that demand that is not just concentrated to the area in which we've traditionally raced with in New York. Then yeah, potentially. I don't know what conversations are happening at the moment, but looking kind of more globally, we've got Tokyo confirmed for season 10, which I'm so excited for. Like, that will be incredible. Racing in the streets of Tokyo, Japan, like that's pretty cool. So yeah, we've also got new races coming up this year with Hyderabad in India, Cape Town coming up as well next month, and Sao Paulo. Like, I know Formula One race in Sao Paulo, but we are racing very much in the city centre, kind of along next to one of the main highways, whereas the Interlagos track is a bit more kind of out of the city. So we're very much like, yeah, bedded in. But yeah, and then obviously Portland's a new city, a new market as well. So yeah, lots of new cool tracks to look forward to.
Yeah, I think it's especially interesting that you say both India and South Africa, because those are two massive markets that love motorsport that Formula One is not in right now. And we're seeing that just huge, not even growth. There's always been a lot of fans of motorsport in India, that it's such a shame that there hasn't historically been a lot of races there. So I think those specifically are great call outs.
Yeah, and we have obviously Mahindra, one of our teams, is an Indian team. So it'd be really cool to have them have their own home race and see the kind of reception that they get there as well.
Yeah, it must be unreal, like, and amazing. Sarah, if you have nothing else to add to that, I wanted to ask Steph, like, what her favorite racing moment what is, or one that really sticks out to you in any series. Like, you could say both Formula E and anything else.
Okay, this is a super easy one for me, and I love this. When I think about it, I just like smile. But probably a bit of a boring answer because I think it's a lot of people's answers. But 2008, Lewis Hamilton overtaking Timo Glock on the last corner in Brazil, in Sao Paulo, to win his first championship. That was, yeah, unreal. I remember exactly like where I was, what I was doing. I'd had my friends around for dinner. I was like 13 or something, 13 or 14. And we were like, oh, no, he's not going to do it. And then he did it. And we were like, what? Just in complete disbelief. But yeah, that is my moment of motorsport for sure. Love that.
That's so funny that that's your favorite moment of motorsport, because in my head, I was gonna be like, oh, she's gonna tell a story about how she met like this amazing driver in the paddock and whatever. And she's like, no, in 2008, I was 13 years old and I was watching it with my friends.
I love that.
That's
amazing.
Awesome.
Yeah. And she had her friends over. Like, what I love.
I know, because it falls over my birthday weekend, the Brazilian race. So it was like a birthday thing. So yeah, made it sweeter. I've just seen Mariella's put a question as well, if we're not too late to answer that one.
I don't see that in the chat, but maybe I'm wrong.
Best place to go to for a new fan that would like to have the best behind the scenes access.
Great question.
Yeah.
So yeah, there we go. We've got it up on the screen. So I honestly would say Mexico, because it's the only one, I think. Let me think. Yeah, I think it is the only one where you have the paddock, the fan village within, like, the backs onto the garages. So that is the best one. And it's just, as I said at the beginning, it's the absolute like epitome of what Formula E is, what we stand for, the entertainment factor, the racing action, just everything, and the accessibility. So 100%. I don't know where you're based, Mariella, but you've got to get it on your list.
Sorry for the message botting. Do not apologize at all.
No
Like,
way.
no. Okay, we're running almost to time, but I have one last question for female fans out there, you know, who get discouraged, who are worried that they can't engage in the sport. What do you like? Do you have any encouraging words for them?
Yeah, like just keep at it. Like you're not alone. I think for me, what would really help if I was in your position is seek out those role models. There's quite a few of us around now, so find them out on podcasts, on video, on YouTube, on socials, and kind of just follow their stories, find out their path. You know, try and find someone that you can relate to, hear their stories, and yeah, like, you know, there's going to be someone that you can relate to that will kind of push you on and motivate you, even if you're not speaking to them directly. It's just kind of hearing that and feeling inspired. So I think for me, that's probably the most powerful thing that you could do. And yeah, just know that you can do it because others have, and there's nothing that can stop you.
I love that. And I think even just to add on to that, the motorsports world is very small. So as soon as you can connect with someone, I have not met a single person in motorsports that is not willing to talk and not willing to share their story and not willing to help support in any way. Like, truly have not met one person who works in Formula One, Formula E, IndyCar, NASCAR, whatever, that is not there to help support you. So even if it seems scary to reach out to someone, I mean, worst case scenario, they don't see your message because that happens too. But best case scenario, 9 times out of 10, that person is going to respond and try to support you in whatever you're doing too. So don't be afraid to reach out to people as well and network. Again, just as we said at the beginning.
100%.
Yeah. And also just connect with other fans. Like if you know you're going to a race, like Sarah and I have our group chats and you can meet other female fans if you go alone or whatever. Like there are a ton of us. And I think we just need to keep saying it. So thank you, Steph.
Thank you.
Yeah, we'll close it out. Thank you so much for spending a part of your Sunday afternoon with us. We know how busy you are. Good luck with the rest of the season. You've been amazing and you continue to be so cool. Like seeing what you do is like awesome. And I'm fangirling here. Sarah, take it away.
Yeah, well, I mean, really quickly before we close out, Steph, where can people come and find you, follow FE?
Yeah.
How can they get connected with you?
Yes, you can follow me on Instagram, Steph J Turner _, and then Formula E. Follow across all of the channels, please, at FIA Formula E.
And I know we have our her Instagram linked in our description box below, but I will go ahead and also add all of the links for Formula E as well, so you can follow them on all their channels and help Steph get her analytics and her numbers that she needs in order to and yeah, otherwise, thank you again. Just as Samantha said, thank you so much for joining us. This was such a lovely conversation. And like every time we talk with you or anyone else in the sport, we learn so much. So thank you for taking the time today for chatting with us. And we'll obviously keep in touch.
Thank you. I've loved it. Really enjoyed it. Thank you, girls.
Yeah.
Bye everyone.